The Unlit Files. 5 scary stories from calls you should not answer. File 11. The Payphone at mile marker 19. I used to drive overnight for a medical courier company. Nothing exciting. Blood samples, sealed coolers, paperwork clipped to the lid, and a route that ran from Knoxville into the smaller mountain towns where the hospitals were too far apart. The rule was simple. If dispatch called, answer. If anyone else called the company phone after midnight, let it ring. Nobody ever explained that rule, and I never asked until the night the payphone called me. It was a Tuesday in late November. Cold rain, empty road, headlights catching fog in thin white sheets. I was on Route 68 with one cooler in the passenger seat and another in the back. At 2:13 in the morning, my company phone buzzed in the cup holder. The caller ID said, Payphone, mile marker 19. That was strange enough, but what made me look twice was the number under it. It was our dispatch line, the exact number I was supposed to answer. So I did. At first, there was only rain, not static, actual rain hitting a metal roof close to the receiver. Then a man whispered, "You're going to miss the turn." I slowed down because my next turn was coming in half a mile. The voice said, "Not that one." I pulled my hand back from the blinker. Ahead, my headlights found the green road sign for County 7. That was my turn. I knew it was. I had driven it every week for 6 months, but the voice on the phone sounded tired and scared, like he was trying not to be heard. "If you turn there," he said, "he gets in." I should have hung up. Instead, I asked, "Who is this?" The line went quiet, and then I heard a second sound behind the rain, a slow knocking. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps. Something knocked against my rear passenger window from inside the van. I almost put the vehicle into the ditch. I jerked the wheel, corrected, and looked in the rearview mirror. The cargo area was black. The cooler was strapped down. No one was back there. The phone whispered, "Keep driving." I passed County 7. The knocking moved from the back window to the side panel. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps. Like someone with wet knuckles was crawling around inside the walls of the van. I started saying every prayer I remembered from childhood. I drove another mile, then 2. The company GPS screamed that I had missed the route. The phone stayed connected. At mile marker 19, there was a payphone. That should not have been possible. The road was all trees and drainage ditches. No gas station, no pull-off, no store. Just a phone booth standing under a dead street light, rain running down the glass. Inside the booth was a man in a courier jacket identical to mine. He held the receiver to his ear with one hand and pressed the other hand flat against the glass. His face was pale and bloated, like he had been underwater for a long time. When my headlights passed over him, his mouth moved in perfect time with the voice on my phone. "Don't stop." I did not stop. The knocking in the back of the van turned into scratching. It followed me until the next town, where I pulled into the emergency bay of a small hospital and ran inside so fast I left the keys in the ignition. Security searched the van. There was no one inside, but the inside of the rear passenger window was covered in handprints. Small ones, large ones, some dragged downward like the fingers had no bones. Dispatch denied calling me. They said no payphones existed on that road anymore. They also told me one of their previous drivers had died near County 7 3 winters earlier after swerving into the trees. I quit before sunrise. 2 weeks later, my final check arrived with a company phone return envelope. I opened the glove compartment to grab the phone. It was already ringing. The caller ID said, "Payphone, mile marker 19." And from somewhere inside my locked van, something knocked 3 times.
File 12. The Night Clerk Line. I worked the desk at a roadside motel that had more rooms than guests. The owner kept the place open because truckers used it during storms, and because the vending machines somehow made more money than the rooms. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I was alone. There was one rule taped under the register in the owner's handwriting. If room 6 calls after 2 a.m., do not answer. Room 6 was not rentable. The door had been painted shut years before I started. I assumed the note was an old joke until the phone rang at 2:17 a.m. The button for room 6 blinked red. The sound of that phone in an empty lobby is something I still hear when a room gets too quiet. It did not ring like the other rooms. It buzzed low like a trapped insect behind the wall. I let it ring. After 10 minutes, it stopped. Then the lobby phone rang from the outside line. I answered because I thought it might be the owner checking on me. A woman said, "Your guest in 6 is asking for towels." I looked through the lobby window toward the courtyard. Room 6 sat dark behind its rusted metal chair and dead planter. I said, "That room is closed." The woman laughed once, not because anything was funny, but because she had heard me say something wrong and wanted me to know it. "No," she said, "that room is full." The room 6 button lit again. I hung up. A minute later, the bell over the front door jingled. No one came in. The automatic door did not open. The bell just shook by itself and went still. Then the security monitor behind me flickered to life. The camera facing room 6 showed the door wide open. There were people standing inside, not one or two, a crowd, shoulder to shoulder, in a room that should barely fit 2 beds. They all faced the camera. Their faces were too dark to see, but I could tell they were wet. Their shirts clung to them. Water dripped from their sleeves onto the carpet. The desk phone rang again. Room 6. I backed away, grabbed my keys, and decided I was done. The second I stepped around the counter, every light in the lobby went out except the red button blinking on the phone. A voice came through the receiver without me picking it up. "We need more towels!" The hallway behind the front desk smelled like old lake water. I heard bare feet slap slowly across the tile near the storage closet. One step, then another, then a wet hand dragged across the wall. I ran through the employee exit and got into my car. When I reversed out of the lot, every motel room was dark, except room 6. The curtains were open. The people inside were pressed against the glass. The next morning, the owner tried to say I had imagined it. Then I showed him the lobby phone. The receiver was filled with brown water. A motel towel had been stuffed into the cord, wrapped tight like someone had tried to strangle the line. He paid me for the full week and asked me not to come back. 2 months later, the motel burned down. I saw a photo of the ruins in a local article. The caption said firefighters found the old room 6 door still standing, even though everything around it was ash. Someone had painted fresh letters across it. No vacancy.
File 13. The Ranger Station Recording. My uncle was a park ranger in northern Idaho, and for one summer I helped him catalog maintenance reports. Mostly fallen trees, broken signs, missing trash lids, and hikers who thought closed meant everyone except them. The ranger station had an old answering machine for after-hours calls. Every morning, my job was to listen, write down anything important, and erase the tape. Most messages were useless. Is the East Trail muddy? Can we bring a small generator? I lost a blue cooler near the lake. Then one morning, there was a message from my uncle. His voice said, "Do not let me in when I get back." I looked up because my uncle was sitting across the room from me, drinking coffee. The recording continued, "It followed my voice down the ridge. It can make itself sound tired. It can make itself sound hurt. If I knock twice, that isn't me. If I ask for the spare key, that isn't me. If I say your mother's name, don't listen." My uncle crossed the room and hit stop so hard the machine cracked. I asked what it was. He told me to go home.
Instead, I stayed because I was 19 and stupid and thought adults only got scared when they were hiding something embarrassing. That night, a storm knocked out power across the park. My uncle and I stayed at the station with 2 lanterns and a radio that only picked up static. Around 1 a.m., something knocked on the front door. Twice. My uncle turned white. Through the door, his voice called, "Open up! I'm freezing!" He was standing right beside me. The thing outside knocked twice again. Then it said my mother's name. Not like someone who had heard it before, like someone who had practiced it in her own mouth. My uncle took the shotgun from the wall, aimed at the door, and whispered, "Go into the file room." I did. From there, I could see the bottom of the front door through a crack. Water seeped under it in a thin black line, even though the porch was covered. A shadow crossed the gap. Long legs, too close together. Then fingers appeared under the door, feeling around on the inside like spiders. The thing outside said in my uncle's voice, "I left the keys in the truck." My real uncle said, "No, you didn't." The fingers stopped moving. For a few seconds, there was nothing but rain. Then every phone in the station rang at once. Desk phone, wall phone, radio phone, even the answering machine, though it was unplugged. All of them rang together until the sound became one long scream. My uncle fired through the door. The ringing stopped. Something heavy ran across the porch and into the woods. Not away from the station, around it, circling. We heard it pass each window, still using his voice, only now it was laughing. At sunrise, we found the answering machine tape on the porch. It was unspooled and wrapped around the railing. When my uncle played what was left, the message had changed. This time, it was my voice. "Do not let me in when I get back." I left that day and never worked in the park again. My uncle retired 2 years later. He never told me what followed him down the ridge, but last Christmas he called me after midnight. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 8 seconds long. 2 knocks, then my uncle's voice whispered, "It still remembers you."
File 14. The Intercom at Franklin Middle. Franklin Middle School was abandoned before I was born, but the county still paid a company to check the building twice a month. I worked for that company for exactly one night. My job was simple: walk the first floor, scan tags with my phone, make sure nobody had broken in, and leave. The building smelled like wet ceiling tiles and pencil shavings. Most classrooms were empty except for desks stacked in the corners. The lockers still had stickers on them from kids who were adults now. At 12:40 a.m., the intercom clicked on. The speakers were supposed to be dead. No power ran to that wing. A woman said, "Teachers, please keep your students inside. There is an animal in the hallway." I froze in front of room 118 with my flashlight pointed at a trophy case. The intercom clicked off. Then, from somewhere down the hall, I heard lockers open. Not one. All of them. A wave of metal doors popping one after another in the dark. I called my supervisor. No service. The intercom clicked again. "Students," the woman said, "do not look through the classroom windows." Every classroom window on that hallway was covered from the inside with black construction paper. Except one. Room 121. I did not want to look, which meant I had to pass it with my head turned away. I walked slowly, counting my own steps, flashlight aimed at the floor. When I reached the door, something breathed on the other side of the glass. It fogged the window in one round patch. Then a finger wrote, backward, in the condensation, "Hide." The intercom clicked on above me. "It has learned the exits." That was when I ran. The front doors were chained from the outside. They had not been when I came in. My keys were gone from my belt. Behind me, the hallway lights began turning on one by one, even though the building had no power. Inside each classroom, desks scraped across the floor. The speakers crackled. "Please remain calm," the woman said. "It is only wearing a student." At the end of the hall, a child stepped out of room 121. He wore a backpack with both straps. His head was tilted too far to the side, like he was listening to something inside the wall. I could not see his face because his hair hung forward in wet strings. He raised one hand and waved. The motion was wrong, not side to side. His fingers folded and unfolded one after another, like someone learning what a wave was. Then he said, in the intercom woman's voice, "You are late for pickup." I broke a window with a fire extinguisher and climbed out through the principal's office. I sliced my arm open on the glass and did not stop running until I reached the road. Police found my keys the next morning. They were hanging on the hook beside the intercom microphone in the main office. There was also a fresh attendance sheet on the desk. Every line had the same name written on it: mine.